Now we've proved that after a couple years they made the fort bigger, no big deal. But they'd already built a church before they made the fort bigger. And a guy told us how big that church was. His name was William Strachey. He was the secretary. He said our church was a pretty little chapel, nearly 60 by 24 feet. And this building here, which is found by soil stains that were 5.5 feet deep, these poles were holding up heavy walls and a heavy roof, and every 12 feet is a stain in the ground. He said 60 by 24 feet. We've got a 64 by 24 foot building, built deep in the ground with a heavy walls and heavy roof, which you would have seen from miles away. And the main gate into Jamestown is when you walk right by John Smith's statue. Would have been John Smith at the time. You would have walked right in there. And this is the first building you see. Pretty big building, seen from far away. Have to walk into it first. Sounds like a church to me. This rectangle-shaped church has 4 graves in it, all of which are empty now. So I'm not standing on them. But I'm going to pass around a photo of what it looks like archaeologically 5 years ago when this becomes a top 10 discovery in the world. It is a church that's the first Protestant church, repeat, the first Protestant church ever found in North America. Now, we have 4 graves there. Those graves are holes filled in the size of people. This is the chancel of the church. Only the most important people get buried in the chancel. Another way to put it is the English class system still lives on after your death. The highest ranking people, the highest ranking place. Whenever we uncover a grave, and it should be hard to do this, by the way, whenever we uncover a grave, we have to get legal permission. We wanted to know who these people were. Because they would have died in an 8-year period and they would have been prominent, we had a list of 7 people right off the bat they could be. We got permission from Richmond to dig here. We worked with the Smithsonian. There's a legal burial permit. And we uncovered these graves in November of 2013. But because we work for the Smithsonian, we got backed up a little bit. They've been there ever since. And it's only on July 28th we made the official announcement of who these people are. So, what's going on here? First of all, I will show you a picture of the graves. Have they been opened? We have 4 men. They're Englishmen. We know how old they were. We know how they were buried. This one right here was buried to rise from the dead to face the congregation. Now, your typical Christian should be buried to rise from the dead to face Christ's return to Jerusalem. But remember, the English church has a lot of Catholic customs to it still, one of which was to bury a priest to rise from the dead to face the congregation. This man was buried in a shroud, not a coffin. Number 2, we have somebody here who was buried in a very odd coffin. The coffin rotted away, but it stayed in the ground. There were enough remnants that told you this man had a, what they call anthropomorphic coffin. The coffin would have actually been contoured around his body. Now that particular type of coffin is much more common 30 years after this man's death. Usually you find them made out of metal. They have a lot of them in Annapolis and St. Mary's Strait in Maryland. But this is the first time we've ever seen this in a burial site. He's somebody very high ranking. He was in his mid-30s and he had a high lead content that said aristocrat. Right here is somebody with the same type of coffin, died at the same time period. That similar coffin design said this guy's probably got the same coffin maker. And he has the same kind of DNA and the same lead levels. This is a kinsman to this man. This is the one you're going to probably like the best. This guy was a captain. We know he was a captain because he was buried with a captain's leading staff. Not the first time we've seen one of these. This captain's leading staff is a symbol of someone being someone of high authority. Now this guy here was another person of high authority because he had silver sash. This fringe has survived over 400 years. Silver is alloyed with copper. The copper survived. And we've got this little fringe under the armpit. We've got a captain's staff on this. But what really made the news is what this other guy was buried with. This silver box. This silver box is weird. It looks like something called a reliquary. We have never been able to open the box. We did not want to damage what was inside the box. So we went to Cornell University under the FBI's advice and used microphotonics to actually look inside the box, and we found human bones, and we found an ampulla, which would be something that would contain holy water or the blood of a saint. Probably the bones of a saint. This is a reliquary. This is the first Protestant church ever built in North America. This is a reliquary. This is a Catholic artifact. Time period where you could be killed for that. Something weird has just happened. Now the big reveal. Who are these men? Right here, a man who died in his mid-30s. He's got a monument on the other side of the wall here. You can look at what's called the Reverend Hunt Shrine. Reverend Robert Hunt, the first minister of Jamestown, a man who dies the year that this church is built. Buried in a shroud, a simple burial of a humble man. This is the man who's one of the heroes of Jamestown. He leads his flock here in the first year. His Bible's all burnt. He doesn't complain. He's seasick on the voyage here. He doesn't complain. He's one of the few men John Smith doesn't complain about. That's an achievement. Reverend Robert Hunt, the first Protestant minister ever in North America, at least at Jamestown. This man here, the man who has the very strange coffin, is a man who we call Sir Ferdinando Wainman. He would have walked right by this gate in 1610. When we talk later on about the starving time, remember only 60 people made it out alive after a chaotic period of a siege. Out of 300 people, 60 make it out alive, starving to death. They're going to be rescued by a guy named Lord Delaware. This is a governor of Virginia who outranks any previous governor who arrives here. His real name is Thomas West. And Thomas West arrived, the second guy in the gate was Sir Ferdinando Wainman. He is the head of the cavalry and of artillery at Jamestown. A man who served in Ireland and a knighted man. This is the first knight ever buried on American soil. This man is his kinsman. We believe him to be Captain William West, who died at the age of 24. At the falls of the James River, one of the men that John Smith has a huge dispute with. The falls of the James River are now called Richmond. This man, Captain William West, is not only related by his skeleton to this man, but the same coffin, the same lead content. They match. They are relatives. This is probably Lord Delaware's nephew. This is probably his cousin. They're definitely kinsmen to the West family, who are, by the way, all over the place in this country. That leaves grave number 3 to be Captain Gabriel Archer. Captain Gabriel Archer is one of John Smith's deadliest enemies. Captain Gabriel Archer dies during the starving time and is buried here during a period of trauma. Gabriel Archer's parents were known to be Roman Catholic. Gabriel Archer has a Catholic reliquary here. Why are they tolerating Catholicism at Jamestown? Perhaps if you're living under the fiction of pretending to be in the Church of England and your world is coming to the end, you're going to not believe in someone else's faith if you really hold the Catholic Church dear. But this is actually the artifact of somebody who's been on a pilgrimage, or somebody's not just a regular Catholic. And he's buried the way a priest is buried. I can't tell you why yet because I don't know. But I'll tell you what, that's weird. We're going to have a lot of scholars looking at this grave. Here's the thing it might mean to somebody who's a Roman Catholic. Now, I'm somebody who's raised Presbyterian, but I got to tell you, from Roman Catholics in this country, you realize now there are people of this faith here from the very first year. And that's a game changer in American history. This is a gigantic deal to have these 4 men. And what's even bigger deal is that a few years later, there's a marriage that takes place right where you're standing. This is the actual wedding spot of where John Rolfe married Pocahontas 5 years later. The starving time is over. The Powhatans and English were in the midst of a really terrible war called the Anglo-Powhatan War. Pocahontas was kidnapped in that war, held as a prisoner, and that man falls in love with her, who's a 29-year-old tobacco planter named John Rolfe, who's not a Catholic. He's actually a Puritan. He's quoting the Old Testament word for word. And his family Bible, which I've held in my hands, is a Geneva edition. We got all sorts of people all over the map here at Jamestown.